Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is a special guest edition of the Dubcast. I'll be talking to Peter Gengler, a paddler living on the east coast of the U.S. who's been involved in traditional things longer than I have. We'll be talking about the Delmarva Paddlers Retreat, which we've been both going to for many years, and his recollection of seeing me in my first time there. He'll talk about kayak building, some kayaks that he's made, including one he calls the rocket ship, which was 20 feet long. He talks extensively about GoPro cameras, which he's used since they first came out, and he's got some of his editing methods. He also talks about the Vimeo platform, which is an alternative to YouTube. There is a pretty good Nathan Apgar story in here. And Peter's personality, one of the endearing traits he has, is he tends to go off on wild tangents. So I've edited this a bit so we stay a little more on topic. This runs about 40 minutes. Well, we are at the Delmarva Paddlers Retreat 2023, and it is Sunday afternoon, winding down, and I'm talking to somebody else who I think has been here longer than I have, and that is the one and only Peter Gengler.
Peter B.
Who now this year got a new name, Peter B. Tell me about that nickname.
Well, our guest, we had a build this week with Anders and Yanni, and there are 5 Peters here, and there were 3 Peters in the build. I was helping in the build assist. I didn't need another kayak, but I love helping in a build. And our guest came down, and we were talking about
Baningua Corneliusen.
Thank you. And we were talking about my bees, because I'm also a beekeeper, been doing it about 22 years. And she just looked at me and went, Peter B. I fell in love with her instantly. And I think the recording, I did a couple of recordings with her, and I think that will be the end of the Delmarva movie this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So you were here. What always in my head gives anybody status is you were here at Delmarva in 1998 when Maligiac came for the first time.
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
Well, I'll go back first to the first time I came here, because this is the story that amazes me still to this day. First of all, being here changed my life. Yeah. And a real gift in my life. It's become very important to me. So friends of mine in Rhode Island, my mentors, Don Betts and Bart Hathaway, both pestered me to drive 7 hours down to Delmarva for an event that was only a Friday night, Saturday, and drive home on Sunday event. Tiny event, long drive for a tiny event. And I'd also never been to a kayak event. I mean, what the hell is a kayak event? I just sort of played on the water around in Rhode Island. And it took me 3.5 years to roll on a Euroblade. That's another story. So Bart Hathaway had given me, and I started with some hulls from Bart Hathaway, and then I decked them out, and then I started designing my own hulls, and we can talk about that if we want to. But Bart Hathaway had given me a copy on VCR tape that was really degraded, like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And it was of John Heath narrating Greenlanders in a pool, doing all the roles. And he handed it to me, and he said, Peter, you should look at this. And at that point, he had been telling me, I think by that point I had been to Walden Pond to Ponscombe. I'm not sure about that timing. I think I'd already
that tape, that was the Greenlanders at Kodiak?
I believe so, and somewhere in my house I have that tape. But so I drove 7.5 hours with one of my fellow paddlers in Rhode Island, Ray Farnham, and I was exhausted. I did all the driving. And I sat down at the round table in the little tiny dining room, which is now 3 or 4 times the size that it was. and there's an older man sitting next to me talking, and it was John Heath. And I immediately recognized his voice, and I went, holy crap, this is serious. And that was when I just sort of opened my eyes to how special this was. And then it just unfolded from there. And I would come back so high from the people and the amount of information and the passion that I couldn't wait for the next year. Just couldn't. And there was only one event. Every other event in the country was commercial. And nothing. And I went to the wooden. Bart and I brought kayaks to the wooden boat show in Mystic, and that was really sweet, but an entirely different thing. And every year I came, it got better and better, and I just went, oh, maybe someday I can teach here, and that was, you know. So,
if my podcast partner Andrew Elizaga out in Seattle were doing this interview, he always asks the special guest, when did you first meet Dubside, and what do you remember about Dubside? So,
well, first of all, I met.
I would try to be too modest to ask that question myself, but I'm an egomaniac just like everybody else.
No, that's fine. So Dubside remembers better the first year that I saw him, I think it was the next year in 90. I started in 97. I think it was 98.
The first year I came was 2001.
Oh, it wasn't that further. Was it really?
I believe so.
Oh, I'm not sure you're right about that,
but
and I'm not sure I can prove
I would imagine that I was like a wallflower the first time because I was a nobody and I was pretty quiet.
Dubside, you do not look like a wallflower. Wallflower. You know, you have a.
I would have been the guy with the folding kayak.
Yes.
That was a little weird.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And when I met you, I remember that your hair tucked into your pockets.
I guess that would be hard to miss.
Yeah. You made an impression on me right from the very beginning.
All right.
All black, hair tucked into the pockets.
Yep. I remember, this wasn't the first time, but you started to get familiar with each other, seeing that every year. You had made the 20-foot long fishing kayak.
Yes. Yeah, I made it.
This is before kayaking fishing was a thing. Right?
Yes. Right. Well, I made it so I'll back up on my kayak stuff, my design. So, Don Betts had made. First of all, there was a Seguin that was made by a guy in Maine, and that was a Greenland kayak that had come from some museum measurements. And that was a set of plywood plans for a tortured plywood kayak. And Bart Hathaway, who had been an Olympic racer in the 60s, I think 64, I have some pictures at my house that he gave me, was an old codger in Weston or Concord, Mass. And you'd walk into his house and you'd be overwhelmed by polyester fumes because he was doing all the stuff in this basement. He had a concrete pool he made that was green like a pine tree, and the whole backyard was full of hulls. Wow. And he had seen this Greenland hull, the Seguin, from this guy. I don't remember his name. I have it somewhere. And he's like, he had never seen a Greenland hull yet. He was, you know, the racers were using hot dogs in the water for racing. And so he got to borrow a made hull, and he made a mold of it. And he had also made a mold of one of Don Betts's kayaks, which was is that right? Is that what I did? No, that's not right, is it? Yeah, that is right. Okay. He made a mold of the short kayak that was 15 feet. Right. And over time, I bought 2 hulls from him. And the first hull, which was the short one of Don Betts's wife's boat, Bart had a thing about using airplane Dacron and a very inexpensive, heat-sensitive heat tape that you could use a tacking iron around the outside of the hull so that you could deck a kayak really quickly and cheaply and really just see what the hull did. And so that was a routine that he did. And you saw some of my earlier kayaks in that. And then he made a mold of the Seguin, and then he made a copy of that for me, and it said, like, take 2 inches off the sides. And he had one of these too, and that was one of the major rolling kayaks at Pond Scum.
Okay.
And I eventually redecked that for Dan. What happened to me is Don Betts gave me a set of plans for this 16 or 15 foot kayak, but they were full-size plans. Don is still a very close friend. And I put them out on the floor on Mylar. I traced those out on Mylar. I have a graphic design background. And then I lengthened that hull to be an 18-foot hull, and that was the red hull that was Dacron that you would have seen when I first came down here. And then everything I've made since then has worked off those basic lines, and I'm expanding and contracting those lines and lengthening those lines, and I've now made, let me think about that for a minute, I'd say 6 different hull designs just starting off of that, but because I have no marine engineering background, it's all just line of sight and what feels good, just experiments. So at a certain point, I decided, well, you know, people were sort of talking about wavelength and speed and stuff like that. Well, I think I'll try making a 21 foot version of one of these Churchill plywood kayaks. So I stretched the pattern out. It was like really like taking the 14 foot, 15 foot kayak and just putting a straight section in the middle and putting the balancer on the ends. Well, when I made the thing, the bottom chine was a solid 19 feet that didn't come off the garage floor.
Yeah.
So it was a rocket ship, and I brought it down, and I did a Dacron deck on it. It was 18.5 inches wide, kind of like a surf ski in its own way. So I brought it down to Delmarva, and Pavia Limholt was here. It's amazing I remember his name. Boy, did he have a great singing voice.
Yeah.
And I guess he and Anders are friends. I've asked about that. Or they've at least met.
Yeah.
But he was our Greenland guest that year, and he just thought that boat was the cat's pajamas. He just couldn't get out of it. He just like never been in anything like it, which was a massive honor to me.
Yeah.
And he asked me to do the lines on it so he could try to do something in Greenland. And if you've never done that and you have no idea how to do that, it's a very interesting problem. I kind of did it. I don't know if he did anything with it, but it was still an honor to do it.
Yeah.
So I'll flash forward because I'm just streaming here. Who brought the bride race to us?
Paul's wedding race?
Thank you. Where did that come
brought
from?
to us? That's a good question.
Well, we started it down here, I think. It pretty much started at Delmarva. And there would be Norsaks for various years of who won and what teams.
Okay.
And it got up to Hudson River Greenland Festival, Hergif.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a past current story. I brought the rocket ship. I usually bring 3 kayaks
for the Paul's wedding race specifically?
I just bought it to see whether people thought it was interesting. Oh God, who's the rope guy? The family of rope folks.
Oh, the Apgars.
Yes, Nate. Thank you.
Yeah.
For those that are listening to me, I apologize. I never get names right. It just doesn't work with me. So it's not that I don't love you. It's just that I can't come up with a name. So we're doing that race. The legs are a speed run, a reverse run, towing a person who's supposed to be a dead seal, and then carrying somebody in the back of the kayak.
Yeah.
I remember when Milton was a SEAL one time and he swam so fast that he pulled the kayak.
Swam the kayak, yeah.
We had to tell the SEAL that it had to be dead.
Yeah.
He said, can I use the speedy one, the rocket ship? I said, sure. So we're all setting up, and I have a kayak called the aircraft carrier. That's my design. It has its own. Yeah. That's the way I see it. And that's what I was paddling, and because I knew it would be really good for the bride. It's really wonderfully stable. And but I ended up, because I can't remember how, I ended up doing 2 laps in that race. I don't remember how. So he takes off, and as I gave him the kayak, I said, "Plan your turn." That's all I said.
That's the downside of a big, long, fast kayak.
And so we come to the mark, and I'm like, I don't know, 50, 60 feet behind him.
Yeah.
I won the race, went right around him. Yeah. Wow. Yep, won that year. And then recently, and then I'll let you ask me a question, so we'll cut this streaming stuff. Recently, and this is what I love about this community, I really love. I get a message on my phone. The same young man is getting an EMT doctor's license. He's been working really hard. We've all grown up with him.
This is Nate Apgar.
This is Nate Apgar. And I guess I get a message on my phone, and it says, "I'm doing my rounds, and I'm thinking how I'm going to manage the day, and I heard your voice in the back of my head saying, 'Plan your turn.'"
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
And that just meant a lot to me.
Yeah. So you would have been here the years we've had quite a selection of Greenlanders here.
Yes.
We've had Campy's been here, and Maligak's been here many times.
I was here when Campy saw.
In 2001, Cindy Cole did she'd I guess been doing the music.
Do you remember what kind of music she used?
It was Louis Armstrong. Oh. Wonderful. What a Wonderful World.
I don't know. I've been, in my mind, I've been looking for that.
She might have been. Yeah, it's Louis Armstrong. What a Wonderful World. She did a routine on the water to that song, and that would have been a year or two after Kayak was here. Just whatever music she used then. But yeah, I was quite impressed.
But the next morning, he walked into the dining room and said, I think what I kind of recall, memory is weird. I've talked to some of the other elders, and we've decided to open the Greenland Challenge up to 9 Inuits.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I've heard that story. Maligak has told us.
And again, that's another how did I fall into this? How am I so randomly honored to have stumbled upon this incredibly unique thing that has really significant cultural implications?
Yeah.
You know, it just, and...
Well, I can remember I tried to come in 2000, but I didn't realize that it filled up so fast. It was a waiting list, and I called like a week before.
And boy, you made an impression in your folding kayak.
Yeah, all right. Well,
you know, I mean, so for those that don't know, full boat? You were in a full boat.
Feathercraft.
Feathercraft.
Yeah.
The things, if my kayak is an aircraft carrier, yours is a battleship. I mean, that thing was like 38 inches wide, and you rolled it like it was a little tiny whitewater boat. You know, you just nailed it all the time. It was like, it was extraordinarily impressive, because those things are really hard to do, too.
Yeah. Well, the hardest throw, after the Kalet, I had the Kahuna, which is a little bit longer, but it's a 28-inch beam.
Is it really that narrow? Wow. Okay, not my impression. It just looks that's memory.
Fatter, yeah. But the under the hull sculling roll, is a wide kayak. That roll gets very difficult.
Oh,
I managed to muscle through it through the Greenland. The first year in Greenland competition, it was at Feathercraft Kahuna, heavily modified with a lower back deck. But I think I missed the left side under the hull sculling roll, because it's I get in like a typical, rebel style kayak, and it's just a piece of cake. You just drop under there.
You could put 2 in the other one. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you made a big impression. But I mean, the other thing is, I got here, I didn't know much. Okay, I mean, you might. So I built some kayaks. I was in my own little tiny bubble. Yeah. I'd mostly paddle alone. You know, and I just didn't know what I was even seeing, you know. In the beginning also it was a blended event with Euroblades and some Greenland blades. Yeah. And there were things like arguments about whether the Greenland blade needed to be 90 degrees in the water, which was nuts.
Not the candid stroke, but the straight in.
Yeah, the straight in was like, no, it's a wing. You know, I mean, like it has an airfoil like a wing, not a wing blade. Yeah. I mean, I just was listen, and we had, the other thing is they made this event was, again, so much fun. There were some extraordinarily special people who passed through here, like Steve Burkhardt. Yeah. Oh God. The airplane pilot.
Jim Black.
Jim Black was, I really like, and he knew Bart Hathaway. Mm-hmm. I think Bart had sent him here. Okay. And when I did, you know, when I would paddle out with him and out to the lighthouse and stuff like it, where I paddle, I'd just do a simple layback roll. Bart would make us be very quiet, no splashes. And Jim would just say, nice roll. And that just filled my heart. Yeah. You know, it's that in a point when you have people who you really admire compliment you, it's very powerful. Yeah. And that, again, I just couldn't wait to get back here, and I have to wait a whole nother year. Yeah. And this weekend, all I've been doing is laughing on the water.
Yeah. So you were very involved with what one could say is the whole GoPro revolution.
Oh God! Yes.
I mean, to think before there were GoPros, you were coming here, which seems like how could that be?
Yes, yeah. That was like, what would that be? Go? I don't know how. And then go or something. I don't know, like AC/DC. I don't know. Anyway, yes, that's very true. I mean, so here's my film GoPro story thing. So I'm also an active mountain biker and have been for a long time. Now about 25 years. My son dragged me into the woods kicking and screaming when he was 9 or 10 years old to do this, and now he's a full-time frame builder and Pioneer Valley Frameworks. He stuck with his passion, and he's really good at what he does. So pretty much most of the bikes I've ever ridden now as an adult, he built for me from scratch, which is really cool. I owe him a kayak, actually. People would ask me that we're not mountain, why do you do this? That's really dangerous. Yeah. And this is when I'm well into it. So I ran into a friend, and he had one of the early GoPros, and it was back when you had batteries in them. And it didn't work, didn't sing to him. He said, Peter, you want this? $100. My wife gave it to me last week. It's not going to happen. And I took a movie that night riding with a bunch of the people I ride with. And I came home and went, wow, I can do something with this. And then before I went to work the next day online, I'd ordered a better one. Yeah. And then I made a couple of movies. I went to Chinese New Year in Boston, and I made a wand with a broken ski pole, and I found that I could stick this thing up, and you would thought I had a drone, and it was remarkable tool. I could walk up to the drummers.
This is pre-drone even.
Oh, this is pre-drone.
Yeah. Wow.
And I could walk up to a crowd in Boston or all around the drummers, and it's wonderful sounds and smells and smoke, and I could stick this wand through a crowd of people right up to the face of the drum. And I went, this is really cool. And then I come back and I look at the footage, and because the GoPro essentially is a pin camera, you know, a single focus, a wide angle, but it's like that's the way the lens works. Yeah. it really looked like I was going down. If I held the ski pole with the full extension with the camera up in my arm, it might as well look like I was on a dolly in the back of a truck going down the street.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really impressive. I'm like, this is really cool. And then the camera went into a case that you could drop, throw. I mean, and then later there were people that dropped them from weather balloons and the cameras survived. I mean, that's just nuts stuff.
Yeah.
And so like the third movie in, and this is when Facebook was brand new.
Okay.
Love it or hate it. I made a movie about mountain biking with my dog. His dog's name is Jasper. He's a smooth collie. He's long gone. And I put because the GoPro allows you to, and I have a photography background for a long time. I got lots of old film cameras. The GoPro allows you to put it anywhere. I mean, if you want to make a movie with your dog and put the camera in the water bowl, you can. You just have to think where you can put it. So I put the camera on the back of my bike on a mount that's over the rear brake. I put the camera on my helmet facing front. I put the camera on my helmet facing back. I made a mount so that the camera could hang from the dog's collar. I made a mount so it could be in the middle of his back looking over the top of his head. I made this movie and I had a lot of fun with it. And I did it really in about 3 rides. And I put it together, I put it up on Facebook. I got lots of good feedback. And I went, wow, this is cool. The work, reward, praise cycle for this is really cool. Then 3 years later, I come down here to Allison with a little film. You know, these are grand people here who paddle all over the world. And I made a little tiny film with my GoPro about paddling around Horseneck Beach, put it to some nice music. And I was kind of humble, and like, Allison, do you think people would be interested in this? I don't know. And I'm talking while I'm showing her film on my laptop. She's like, shut up, Peter, let me watch the film. It's like, that's me. And she goes, oh yeah, we'll do this. And that's how we started that going here, which is other people named Peter's Shorts because Dave Sides auctioned my shorts that he stole with my wife for the auction. Anyway, is this obscure enough for your podcast?
That's fine.
So the GoPro is an astonishing tool that has, between iMovie and the GoPro, has entirely changed filmmaking. When you realize that like Seinfeld, Comedian in Cars, maybe not now, but was all GoPros. You know, instead of using $5,000 cameras, they're using $200 and $300 cameras. I mean, I can remember seeing Bell Helicopter doing a flight test of some crazy helicopter, and I saw the inside I could see the other GoPros in the demonstration shot that you know, this is $1 billion company and they're using $300-400 cameras. That's pretty amazing. That's just amazing. And then iMovie makes it accessible that you can just start to play. And I discovered that I like to edit. And then if you go to an event like this and you want to tell the same story that I told about my dog mountain biking and get other people interested in riding with their animals.
So with the cost of cameras dropping so much, you can have 10 cameramen, just hand out 10 cameras. So you come here with whether it's 5 or 10 GoPros,
and other
hand it out to people.
And now I ask them shoot horizontally in your iPhone.
Okay.
And now they all, and like today, people are airdropping them to me, and I'm like, I'm not even sure I know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So you edit these down,
yes.
And then next year you come with various montages of all sorts of really cool
I
stuff.
tried to get them up quicker than that.
Yeah? Oh, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking on my timetable. Yeah, by next year I'd get something done. Yeah, all right. My
goal. So here's the secret of editing, and I think this is really important. And it's it's the digital technology. It's a lot of things, but a couple of things. One is like you make your best, you take all the stuff that you have and you kind of trust your gut when you start to throw stuff together. You develop a little technique on how you want to build a story and decide whether it has to be like a linear timeline or it can be random. But if it's like a weekend event and there's all this stuff happening and you want to cover little pieces of it enough to tease people that they might be interested. So you throw these pieces together, you throw some music on it, and that changes everything. And then you make your best edit, and then when you've and that's, you know, maybe you're looking for a 5-minute film. I'll come back to that. But in my case, what I'll do is I'll pester my wife enough, Judith, she's really tolerant of me, and I'll have her I will look over her shoulder as she looks at the film of my first bet, and she doesn't have to say anything to me. I already know by watching her where I can cut. But the key part of that is the thing that all this technology gives us. Now, I don't think that if you're writing a thesis, that when you want to cut your thesis, that you make a duplicate copy and then tear it to shreds. I think people who do that, they keep working on the same digital document. Well, in filmmaking, you can make a digital copy of your best edit, cut it and feel completely freed from all the work you put into it to cut it in half. And you can always go back to that other original. I never do. And that, if there's anything that is more important, that's like the largest gift of editing, is that you can do that, make a duplicate, cut it again, and you have that safety net, that psychological safety net, and you can move forward, and because you have to, you know, I think I'm relatively entertaining in my movies, and I think they get better. But on Vimeo, I can also, and I like Vimeo as a platform. I'm kind of not interested in YouTube throwing everything else at people. I like.
Tell me about the distinction between Vimeo as a whole different platform.
Vimeo is a whole different platform. It sort of started for movie makers and artists. You control your front page. It's more like looking at a portfolio.
So it's stuff that's Vimeo.
Vimeo.
So stuff on there is not on YouTube.
It could be.
It could be.
Sometimes
but not necessarily.
It depends on the artist. I think Luke, the kayak hipster, is on both. He's a good friend. But anyway, one of the tools you get with some of the, I'm sure you get stuff like this in YouTube. I just don't know because I don't use it. But I can not only see how many people every week or every month watch a video of mine, I can also see what percentage of them watch it to the end, how far they get. So I find it fascinating and frustrating that I can make a movie that's under 5 minutes for an audience of, let's say, you know, if it's a Delmarva or something like that, maybe it's the core audience is the 70 people who were there, who might want to see themselves, or not. But there's a broader audience than that. And I can see that with all of that, that 60% of the people got to the end, or even 30%. You know, so that fascinates me, and because our attention spans have gotten so short, you know, that you have to be that pumped all the time to just keep, and it's like, I think my films are kind of pumpy, but maybe not. I don't know. So it's, you know, that can be kind of frustrating. But edit, you know, cut it. Now that people know that I'm filming and there are other people filming for me, everybody walks up to you and tells you their amazing story. And it's intense. It's really intense. It's really sweet. But the point is to get it short.
Now we've got the GoPro revolution and how that's changed, and how you get footage from here. Now we come to the drone revolution.
Well, I'm gonna add something to that. Okay. So here's the thing that's worked for me. So first of all, I discover the GoPro and I start making films by myself and going to things and making films and doing what I can. And then I realized I really like being a photographer on vacation. You're either on vacation or you're a photographer. Yeah. It's kind of hard to do both. So, and so you discovered you can't be everywhere all at once, particularly if there are like multiple things happening in a thing like Delmarva or Hurga, where there's just all sorts of stuff happening all over the place. Yeah. So you say, can you do this? Can you do this? Well, people love to shoot with their cameras now, with their phones or GoPros or the DJI cameras. They don't like to edit. So I'll leave Delmarva. I don't know yet what I've even begin to got, but I know that 10 people have probably, maybe 12 have shot for me. And they've all sent me they'll all get credit. I try to keep track of everybody. They get to have a piece of that, which is, I think, really cool. And they don't have to edit, and I like to edit. So that's another part of, and the other thing that's really cool about that is you get every one of those people's point of view, because everybody shoots differently. Giving a GoPro to a 12 or a 14 or 15-year-old boy or girl and saying, go interview some people, is giving them a tool to ask adults serious questions. Which is, you get wonderful interviews. I mean, think about being 12 years old and say, go talk to those people over here and just ask them how they feel about riding today. And they react really, the adults react very sincerely, and they're touched to be asked by the 10-year-old.
How does it feel coming for so long and seeing so much change? And there's a natural tendency, for me anyway, to get, your mind shifts into that thing, well, I used to be this way and this guy's not here anymore. And you're kind of longing for the past and not accepting that, well, now it's this time, now we have these new people here and these are really cool. And you got to let it grow and let it take its own new thing. And I know some people deal with that by just not coming back, saying it's not the same, this new thing, I can't handle it, and I'm not going to show up anymore. But you and I as well, we keep coming. We know that it keeps changing, but we're here.
I love every single change. I have loved all the flow, from a mixed-use Euroblade Greenland to now the building, you bringing the stick kits, Anders bringing the stick build. You got 2 hours to build a kayak.
The 2-hour kayak build,
The 2-hour kayak build is mind-blowing experience. I have no issue with any of the changes. I think it continues to get better and better. I think these events respond very well to what the needs are. And I'll come here as long as I can stand. I mean, we have a guest here, Len. He's 89. He moved into a small house this year. He built, and he's a wonderful man. I've known him since very early in the beginning. And he built a kayak that has the 2 bulkheads, and it will fit in his closet. And maybe it might be 12 feet long or something like that. And he just floated around out there. I'd be very happy if I was there doing that at 89. That would be just fine with me.
So your answer I hear is embracing the change.
Absolutely.
Well, to me, that sounds very Greenlandic. That's what they do in Greenland. They're not lamenting what they used to have or what they think they should have. It's just what we got today, this is it.
And I would add that in terms of the consequences of this event, to sit around and be recognized even by a person like John Peterson. That, oh, hi, Peter, and give me a hug. That just, doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, here's a man who's completely in touch with where his food comes from.
Yeah.
Not me. Yeah, and I'm a farmer, and by comparison to him, you know, that's such an honor when we have the Greenland this year. All the guests have been interesting.
Yeah.
All the guests have been interesting.
Yeah.
This weekend's guest has been extraordinarily
Yes.
interesting. Subject for a later date.
Absolutely.
You know, starting with John Heath, I knew from the very beginning that this was a serious place with seriously passionate people who only wanted to give.
Yeah. Thanks.
Love you, Dubside.
Thanks to Peter Gengler for that interview. And thanks to you for listening to the Dubcast with Dubside.